Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws NBA podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-hosts, TV, aka TV on basketball, alongside my co-host Jay, aka Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
TV, it's been a hot minute, my boy. We had a lot of convo before the podcast, but now we get to bring the heat onto the mic, bro. How have you been? First of all, how have you been, bro? I know we talked off camera, but let the people know, man. How you been?
I've been good, man. Just turned 23 this week. Feeling good.
Yes, sir.
So I'm on a high right now, but obviously the NBA season is right around the corner. We're less than a month away. We just finished the FIBA tournaments, which we're going to get into that as well. So there is a lot to talk to and a lot to catch up on in today's episode. Feeling good and just glad to be talking about some NBA basketball. Of course, we're going to be talking about of course, FIBA, the new load management rules, which have been implemented this year, which is going to be really interesting. We're going to go through a lot of season preview in the next couple of weeks, so don't be worried about that. But we're going to do a little bit of a taste here today with some kind of prompts that we're going to go to about coming up for this regular season. So we're going to talk about that. And of course, we're going to end the podcast with the draft, with the quiz, all that good stuff. You already know what you get with this podcast. But before we start the episode, we do have to plug our socials. Make sure you follow myself and Jay using our personal Instagrams and TikToks down below. You can find that all our links on over there. And as for the Hit Your Free Throws pod, remember to follow us on Instagram and TikTok for the best NBA content. We are now into 2020 for the NBA 2K universe. We have gone 17 years through the NBA 2K universe, and we're almost done. So if you want to check that out, check out all the episodes. We're about to post episode 20 after the recording of this episode, so be on the lookout for that. And you can see a bunch of more NBA content, especially when it comes closer to the regular NBA season. You're going to see a lot more of us over on that page. And in terms of the podcast, make sure you subscribe to any of the podcast networks, Spotify and Apple. Leave a review, all that good stuff. And if you're on YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. Jay, there's a lot to catch up on, but are you ready to actually talk some ball now?
Man, I've been waiting for this all week, man. Let's get into it.
Let us get into it, and we got to talk about the FIBA tournament and how that ended up for all the teams involved. Before we get into the meat and potatoes, I know we got to talk quite a bit about Canada, USA, but we got to show some love to the winners of the tournament. Germany ended up beating Serbia in the final. That was a pretty crazy game. And at the end of the day, they were their point guard, and Dennis Schroeder was named player of the tournament. It was a close game, honestly, throughout. Serbia was behind for quite a bit. They had a good push in the first quarter. Germany started pulling away in the second half. Serbia tried to make it close in the end, but it was too little too late. And Germany are your world champions. We're going to get into that discussion a bit later, too, which has been kind of taking over NBA discourse as well. But, Jay, how do you feel about Germany winning, and how do you feel about their chances potentially in the Olympics next year?
So Germany, big ups to them, man. Big time for them. Dennis Schroeder, probably one of the most interesting stories when you talk about what he's gone through just in the last year. I mean, TV, we all know it. I think me and you were both podcasting separately at the time, but we all remember that Dennis Schroeder had one of the funniest contract situations that we've seen in quite some time. I think the last person that we saw was close to a meme like this when it came to the kind of money he thought he was going to get versus the kind of money he got was probably when Isaiah Thomas said they're going to have to back out the Brinks truck.
Probably, yeah.
That's tough. That's tough. But you've definitely seen a resurgence in him, TV. I know you've got to be feeling good about it, considering the fact that Dennis Schroeder is going to be coming off this high, and he's going to be coming over to your Toronto Raptors basketball team. Hopefully, he can bring some of that winning energy back to the franchise, considering that you guys still have a lot of, big decisions to make. But if you guys play some good ball this year, it might kind of weather the storm a bit. But in terms of Germany moving forward, I think they can compete, man. I think at the end of the day, it's a little hard to tell with FIBA just who is really that team, right, on the national stage when you consider that a lot of the teams in the FIBA tournament didn't send their best guys. I mean, for example, the same Serbia team we're talking about, they were a team that came in without Nikola Jokic. Now, granted, they made it all the way to the final game, which is huge to consider. That's
Yeah.
huge for them. And I think they're a team that you need to keep an eye out on because of the fact that if Nikola Jokic does participate, that evens the score. But we got to remember, for example, Greece, they didn't have Giannis. I thought that Slovenia played relatively well. They did have Luka for most of the time. So, I mean, obviously there's that. But I feel as though they were kind of a sleeping giant that got taken out a little earlier than we expected. We know the U.S. team, and we'll get to that a little bit later, but we know the U.S. team didn't send their guys. Even you guys were short, right? Jamal Murray didn't play for you guys, right?
Jamal, Andrew Wiggins, and I believe Chris Boucher couldn't make the trip.
Yeah, so you guys, I mean, granted, you guys were probably the most NBA littered team aside from the US, obviously. But I think that even when you talk about from a tourney standpoint, we definitely didn't even see the best caliber basketball we could have seen in terms of NBA translation, unless you watch Shai Gilgeous-Alexander play basketball, because that's an entirely separate conversation. Because boy, oh boy, Dennis Schroeder might have been the man of the tournament, but throughout the entire FIBA process, you had the conversations around Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in FIBA starting to translate over to where people stand on him in the standings in the NBA. Some people were throwing out top 10 player in the league. Some were saying he was the best shooting guard in the NBA above Devin Booker. The discourse is getting spicy out here, TV, and clearly FIBA has had a lot of influence on that. So I'm looking forward to a lot of these teams that made it to the Final Four and Final Five. I honestly think there's a lot to like about this once we get to Olympics play.
Yeah, and I mean, like, Germany, got to shout them out, man. They went completely undefeated in this entire tournament. Dennis Schroeder, I mean, he was honestly one of the, like, he was absolutely amazing for Team Germany. And honestly, I was very impressed after him going 4 for 26 in, like, one of the elimination games. The fact that he had such a bad game, Team Germany was propping him up, like, encouraging him to continue on and be that guy, and he was able to still carry them throughout the rest of their tournament, even after, like, probably one of the worst games of his basketball career. Was really impressive. The amount of adversity they faced when facing, like, Team USA, when facing other teams in this tournament, it was pretty good. And I gotta admit, they were the worthy winner of this competition. Serbia really did their best. Of course, missing Jokic, and honestly, shout out, they don't have Poku as well. But missing them two was absolutely tough. But they made a great tournament push. Them showing, like, how good they can be even without their top guy says a lot for their chances in the Olympics for next year. But this game was really fun. Excited for Team Germany. I'm excited for Schroeder. I don't know how that's going to be able to translate to the Toronto Raptors season. We'll have to wait and see. We're going to get more into the season preview stuff in the future episodes. But it was a good final. It was a really good final. I'm really happy that the Germany was able to pull through. Also, shout out to Franz Wagner. This man played absolutely phenomenal in this tournament as well. Excited to see how he's going to improve going into the next NBA season. But Jay, we gotta talk about Canada, USA. We gotta talk about it.
Oh man,
third place game, Canada, USA. Honestly, one of the most fun games I've seen all year. Like, plain stop. I had to wake up at 4:30 in the morning to watch this shit, and it was freaking worth it. It was so freaking worth it. Like, Canada, and I'm telling you right now, Jay, we outplayed y'all for like 90% of the game.
Facts.
Like 90% of the game, we outplayed y'all. That ending sequence with Mikal Bridges was
insane. One of the craziest shot sequences you will see in a regulation game. That was insanity.
Ever. Like, I mean, the thing is, like, obviously that's going to be overshadowed because Team USA lost, but at the same time, that was one of the craziest sequences I've ever seen, like, ever. So it's like the fact that was able to even get to overtime. USA did fold in overtime, mostly because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is that guy. But at the end of the day, Team Canada came out to win. And the man of the game, Jay, you don't want to hear it. No one wants to hear it. Dylan Brooks, 39 points on 7 of 8 from 3. My man is on his redemption arc. This is the start of it. How does it feel to get got by Dylan Brooks?
Dude, okay, so look. This is the thing, TV. It's not the losing in overtime. It's not because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I said it earlier, one of the most insane players in the tournament. I think you can make an argument. They made the all-tourney team. Obviously, Shai was on it. You can make an argument in the pecking order that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was really the best player of the entire run, front to back.
He
was. So I'm not hurt by losing in overtime under those circumstances. I don't even know if I'm necessarily hurt that we ended up in 4th place and not medaling. I think the part that hurts is that the parting gift from the FIBA tourney is knowing that the last game ended with 39 points from Dillon Brooks. I don't even need to look that stat line up to understand. Like you mentioned the 7 of 8 from 3, and obviously that was the insane part.
Yeah.
But TV, let me give some context to anybody that did not watch this game, or let me flip it around. Let me give context to people of how I found out about this game, because this game was at 8:20 in the morning U.S. time. I was at work. I wasn't able to watch this game, right? Yeah. I get out of work later on that afternoon, and I get a Twitter notification from Butt Crack Sports. Now, if you know, you know. But Butt Crack Sports on Twitter, for those who are not informed, is literally a meme page for sports that has got a pretty large following, but their whole thing is about misinformation, giving very random, stats and stuff, just stuff that's supposed, or even just random reporting that's not true, and it's blatantly true, or blatantly not true, right? Yeah. But I got a notification from Butt Crack Sports that said Dillon Brooks dropped 39 points on Team USA. And I said, okay, it's clearly a joke. All right, cool, whatever. I go to click on it because I'm thinking maybe they post some highlights or something with it, and maybe it's some meme highlights. He misses a bunch of shots, whatever. At the bottom in parentheses of the tweet says, "I'm not joking. This is the real stat line." So I had to look it up myself because, again, it's Butt Crack Sports. So I have to do my due diligence. When I found out that this man truly balled out in the bronze game, I'm like, if there wasn't any memeable moment to come out of the summer with, that's the one. Dillon Brooks, the biggest villain of the summer, the guy that his own team let other teams know blatantly. What was it? What was the line, TV? By no means. What was it? By no means will we be renewing his contract or something. It was basically they made it entirely clear that there's no way that Dillon Brooks is coming back to the Memphis Grizzlies. That's the guy who sent the U.S. home with no medal. That's the guy who did it. So I don't know. Again, I try my best to translate things to the NBA. I don't know how that's going to impact things with him and the Houston Rockets. But man, you want to talk about an aha moment? Jeez, man. Being on the wrong end of that one, that's the part that really hurts.
Yeah, no, I saw out of all the replies, out of all the comments, it's the fact, it's not the fact that you lost. Of course, it sucks that you lost because you're freaking Team USA. You should at least be medaling, at the very least, be medaling in these sort of tournaments. But losing in a way to Dillon Brooks like that, especially with the way this man's been clowned the last 3 to 4 months, that I can imagine how much that hurt. Because hey, look, but from our side of things, in Canada, there's a thing called Canadian Heritage Moments, where it's we have these documentary specials highlighting the best moments in Canadian history, not even just sports, just Canadian history. Dillon Brooks scoring 39 points to win Canada their first ever medal in international play is a Canadian heritage moment. Not only for being the first team to ever medal, but the way you can have a whole thing about this whole arc that him becoming a villain up to this very point, and then just starting to prove everyone wrong from that very, very moment. It was an absolute joy to watch. I couldn't believe it with my eyes just watching it, but it happened. And Team Canada came out with the medal. Absolutely fantastic. The fact that we still didn't have Jamal Murray or Andrew Wiggins on the roster, which they're hoping to come next year, gives me a lot more hope. Maybe potential to even move further. A silver, maybe a gold. Who knows? But man, Team Canada is on the rise. This is the best the program has ever looked. And this whole thing with the whole 3-year program, trying to get these guys to work together. New coach Jordi Fernandez really getting the respect of these guys already. Got to show up to Team Canada. Congratulations for them getting the silver medal. We got to talk about Team USA. Where do they go from here, Jay? Where do they go?
Dude, we saw it the same afternoon. The same afternoon that they lost the game, everybody was like, so what's up with 2024? Like, literally, it didn't even take like a 24-hour news cycle for things to drop where it said LeBron James has been reaching out to superstars across the league. There's already Last Dance, like Adobe Photoshop, like there's like, bro, there's like Adobe Photoshop flyers for like the Last Dance of like them going to Paris and redeeming us as what's been deemed the Redeem Team 2.0.
Yeah.
Hey, look. If we send the guys, I feel a lot better about our situation. But I'll be honest, TV, at the beginning of the tournament, I told you this. I thought we sent a good group out this time around. I think at the end of the day, I think that FIBA was a good feeling out process. I think that FIBA has also, and we talked about this at the beginning of the tourney, FIBA has been a really good opportunity, once again, especially for the casual basketball fan, to come to the realization that international play is getting better across the world. And that is why the league in itself is getting better, because we are seeing a lot of these international guys produce, granted, on the international level, but a lot of that talent is coming back to quote unquote home base, which is the greatest basketball league in the world, which is the NBA. And I think that the truth is, with the basketball world, I wouldn't say catching up to the NBA per se, right? But I would say slowly inching themselves into more of a conversation when it comes to the sport of basketball. Sending the B team or the C team isn't gonna fly like it used to.
Yeah.
It's just not going to fly the way it used to. And I mean, TV, we talked about this at one point. Lauri Markkanen was one of the top scorers in FIBA at one point. Obviously, Team Canada is here. We've kind of known this, but like this is one of the first times you guys have really been healthy.
Visual proof that we finally
this is the first time that you guys have been like healthy and really put it all together coming into one of these international competitions. That's another thing. But Canada's kind of been here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In terms of the talent, there's a handful of other teams. I think Serbia now, again, is one of those on the rise. Germany. Obviously, we're seeing some influx in terms of the talent pool where it's not just Australia, Spain. We know how Spain normally gets down. Granted, whatever. France wasn't their best outing this year. France and Australia both went out a lot more sad than I thought they would have. But that's a different kind of podcast. But yeah, I just think that now the U.S. team needs to realize that on an international level, these guys are here to play. They have continuity. They have NBA level talent. The guys who are not NBA level talent are guys who are still highly skilled individuals.
They're good, bro.
They're really good, bro. And I think this is a realization that if we keep playing around, quote unquote, with our food gonna bite back. That's just simple. And this is a representation of that. If the U.S. is going to play around with the rest of the world on the basketball front, the rest of the world is going to respond accordingly, and it's going to lead to stuff like this.
But isn't this what we always see with the U.S., though? I feel like this is like the same cycle we get through every single time when it comes to Olympics. They send out some sort of B or C team to any of these either international qualifiers, the World Cup. I mean, they've only won, I think, 2 World Cups in the last, 20 years.
True.
The U.S. So they send out their B or C teams to these events, and then they get a wake-up call from these international teams who are getting better. And then they're like, oh, shit, let's assemble the Avengers. Time to go redeem Team 3.0. And we're going to get another documentary of this. Oh, we're USA back on top of the basketball world. Why don't they care about this other stuff? Like, they are getting, they just go ahead. And I think we've seen in this tournament, the effort levels, the defensive levels were embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassing. In the early stages, USA, they walked through everything. They had an easy schedule. But the minute they faced the legitimate competition, whether it was Germany or Canada, they got They got their ass handed to them. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like at some point, like US are gonna have to maybe not sound the best guys, or like they gotta have like some sort of like urgency to like really establish their program at these sort of events. It's not just the Olympics. There's a lot of like other events here. This is the freaking World Cup. This is a freaking big deal, and other countries treat it as such. USA has to have that some sort of level. Maybe not. Maybe LeBron, KD doesn't want to commit 3-4 weeks in like in the middle of Asia, because like I was looking at Instagram, LeBron's in Saudi Arabia right now. You see KD like and other guys hitting the golf course. You see Steph Curry at a Las Vegas Aces game. Like they're doing their own thing, but they gotta give like some sort of effort. They gotta establish some sort of program where they actually look like you actually get players to these events like the World Cup, and actually they care. Because I did not see this with this team. Like the two standout players for me in this tournament, Anthony Edwards played well, and Mikal Bridges. Everyone else I felt like was more of a disappointed, especially looking at you, Jaren Jackson. Jaren Jackson was absolutely garbage in this series. Mr. Training Camp MVP, my ass. But at the same time, USA's got to I have a feeling and I think Rudy Gay kind of mentioned something like this. They got to get players who actually want to be there and actually want to compete. These guys that came in here, they did not show the compete level, and then they got their ass handed to them. Do you think that they need to kind of rethink how they do it, and maybe get whole tryouts or something to get guys knowing this is actually a big deal, and we want kind of the best people and the most committed people in order to be committed to the process, not just for the Olympics but also for these events.
I think he made a really great point, and I think on top of it, I think you're making a really good point. And I think the idea of tryouts is huge, but I think my question to that is, does that lower the pool even further? Right? Because these guys were part of a selection as well. And most people view this as the C team, aside from maybe Anthony Edwards and Tyrese Halliburton at the time. Obviously, Mikal Bridges' name is growing. Brandon Ingram is a former one-time All-Star as well. There's guys on this team. Jalen Brunson played really well this past season. There's a lot of guys who played relatively well during the regular season, and we have name notoriety for them. But even those guys were viewed as part of a C team roster that we sent for this FIBA tourney. So that goes to make you wonder, if you have to try out for this team, I guess at that point maybe that will further tell us just how enthusiastic the U.S. is or isn't about international play. Maybe it's that simple. Maybe we have to learn about ourselves through things like this, because I think when it comes down to selection and the choice of do you or do you not play, I think we have given it a bit of a cop-out. But I think the fact that there's the idea of implementing tryouts, although I think the players who make it onto the team truly will care, I also think that when you think about the talent pool the U.S. has, how many guys do you think off the top of your head can you name? I mean this almost sarcastically, but how many guys can you name off the top of your head that without trying out would instantly make the team, right? Does LeBron James have to try out for FIBA? Does Kevin Durant have to try out for FIBA? Does Devin Booker or Donovan Mitchell have to try out for FIBA? And that's where it gets tricky.
A few of them do. In my opinion, a few of them do. At least people with LeBron and KD were there before. People who want to just come into the system, there has to be some sort of thing. If you look at this FIBA World Cup team, they did not have anyone with that killer instinct. People like Kobe in the past who used to play for Team USA, Jimmy Butler who has it in the NBA. None of them had those instincts where they're when we're on the court, we are giving our best effort and we're going to try and take down the team in front of them. They had none of those guys there. Honestly, hearing this stuff from before, during training camp, them losing to the select team of Cade Cunningham, John Jenkins, Langston Galloway, kind of shows you kind of where the mind space of Team USA was at that time. Sure, they kind of picked up their slack a bit, but at the same time, when they face adversity, they weren't able to face up to that challenge. So even for these tournaments, even for these sort of tournaments, right? Even if you have lesser talent, I don't want to say even going down to a Langston Galloway, but the U.S. has so much talent compared to the rest of the world, and I'm still thinking that U.S. is the highest, that has the best talent in terms of basketball in the world. But wouldn't you rather have someone like a Langston Galloway, a former NBA player, a veteran, who wants to be a part of this team and will give 100% like he's still a freaking NBA player, than like getting like a half-ass effort from like Walker Kessler or something like that. You need guys that want to be there, they want to try. The U.S. has been waiting too long to like go off talent. That they're kind of missing the fact that people want to be there. They want to be representing their country and want to like end up like beating these other guys and be the so-called world champs. So yes and no. People like LeBron, KD, I think have enough notoriety, especially with Team USA, to kind of be on the roster already. But when you look at guys that haven't been there before, like a Devin Booker, like for example, I don't think Donovan Mitchell has had enough years for me there in Team USA. You got to find the right balance of players there. And if it means tryouts and seeing who really wants to be there, who really wants to compete, you might have to do it. Because if you like give out a half-ass effort, if you don't put too much care into this, then Canada's gonna take a spot from you. Serbia, Nikola Jokic coming back next year, he might be able to take a spot from the US. Germany, who just won this year. Other teams are getting good, and if you don't take this seriously enough, they might be able to get you. And if you lose in the Olympics, it's just going to be even more tough for Team USA.
Yeah, I mean, I think you make a lot of points. I mean, overall, I do think that it's a program that's neglected. I do also feel like we only take things like this seriously once we get embarrassed, which obviously is kind of like reaction syndrome. And I hate that as well because I feel as though sometimes I think we lean so much into the fact that we have the greatest basketball on the planet that I think we almost view it as we can send anyone that has NBA talent into this kind of lion's den and they will produce. And I just don't think that with the once upon a time TV, I think we could beat the world off run and jump athletes and isolation play. Once upon a time, I think we could do that. I think we are now at the point when you talk about team basketball, the length in which these programs have now been together, even deeper into how long the FIBA tourney and so on has been around. And then you mix in with that the fact that there's a lot more international talent that also makes up NBA rosters. I don't think you could just beat them off of NBA, just any NBA talent or just any form of run and jump athletes or top ISO guys. I love Anthony Edwards as a player. Anthony Edwards was probably a top 1% athlete in all of the FIBA tourney, but I do not think he was a top 1% FIBA player. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
I think he was a very good player under FIBA circumstances. But I think if this sounds weird when you start talking about guys like Dennis Schroeder, Patty Mills, guys of that nature who we've seen in the past produce at such a high level, maybe even Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a good example of this. But there's only a handful of guys where you can be the single top talent on a team and carry throughout an international tourney in this day and age. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was arguably the best player in the entire tourney. You guys placed third.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a guy who's coming off an all-star game. Dennis Schroeder is coming off of watching his contract go down the drain and having to re-up by going to the Toronto Raptors a few seasons later, which I think he's going to play well for you guys. I think I mentioned that when we were talking free agency earlier this summer. But that's a guy whose life is in a completely different ballpark nowadays in terms of his NBA mortality than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That was the guy who was named player of the tourney.
Yeah.
That goes to show you that at the end of the day, international play is weighed differently than just simply, do you have NBA talent on your roster? The number of NBA talent guys on your roster does not determine your hierarchy in the basketball world anymore. I would argue Canada, talent-wise, might have, maybe, depends on how you view it, maybe even without sending Andrew Wiggins and Jamal Murray and guys of that nature out, I think you guys might have still had more NBA talent than the U.S. on any given day. Arguably. Maybe not in terms of all-star games or things of that nature. But I think 1 through 12, I think you guys arguably had a better overall NBA roster than we did. But we both ended up in the game for bronze. Like, you know what I mean? So I think that's just where it comes down to, bro. I think the U.S. needs to come down to the realization that between together ball and the international game catching up to the NBA on a real skill-based level, you cannot go out there and half-ass. I think you make a really great point.
Yeah, 100%. Before we move on to the next topic, your stance on this World Champions thing. What's your stance on it?
It's so stupid, but I
It's
understand it.
stupid.
It's so stupid, but I get it. Like, I understand it. At the end of the day, FIBA is where world champions happen,
The
right?
Olympics. Yeah,
That's
Olympics.
that's there's environments for these things. I think the World Series, for example, right? That's a good measuring stick for this kind of thing. When you include the world in some of these things, I think the semantics is, well, the NBA is the greatest league in the world in terms of basketball, and therefore, if you are the champion of the league, then you are the champion of the world. And I just don't think that translates well.
Okay. I just wanted to know where your thoughts on that because
So,
I'm literally of the same like standpoint. Yes, you have the best international players go to the NBA. We get that. I don't think anyone is like doubting the fact that the U.S. is the best league in the world, that the best talent comes to the U.S. But the whole semantics of world champions just does not go with it. You're an NBA champion. You're the best team in America. Like
right.
that. Like that's fine. Like if you want to say that you're the best team, like the best maybe team in the world, not like you're like world champions. Like you, I don't know. But I mean, I just don't like the idea of just like calling it world. A great example I like to compare this to is like the UEFA Champions League over in soccer.
Mm,
The Champions League, they always call themselves champions of Europe because you know what it is? It's a tournament for the best teams in Europe to come together and and the best teams that have to fight it out, and the winner becomes the champions of Europe because you are the number one team in Europe. It's the same thing if the NBA and the Euro League and other leagues come together to kind of like do a mini tournament to see who's gonna end up winning. Sure, an NBA team might end up winning, but that would be more of like a potential world champion. This FIBA stuff, potential Olympic stuff, that's where you can name world champions. It's just the idea of calling it world champions. I think it's just like disregarding everything else, and I don't think that's just the right like wording for it. NBA champion, sure, whatever. Just calling it world champions, and I think that's all Noah. I think it's a Noah Lyles. That's his name.
yeah.
That's all he was trying to say. He's not trying to diss the U.S., the NBA, and the talent that they have over here. It's just not world champions. That's just plain and simple.
Yeah.
It's not hard to really. People are making it such a big deal, like, but yeah, the best talent comes over here. It's just you're just like logically you're not world champions. That's just what
Yeah.
it comes down to. And I think people just kind of need to really like basic in on that concept and really just kind of get to that point because that's really all it is. But yeah, we talked about FIBA and all that. Let us know down below your thoughts. I wonder if anyone from this year is going to end up going to the tournament next year. I'm not sure. Do you think so?
I think that's a great question, TV. I think, man, that might be a question to like pose on TikTok or just post for the comment section. Like, how many guys from Team USA do we really think would qualify from the FIBA tourney to make the big boy squad?
No, to be honest, and this is like the way I view it, I think Mikal Bridges is the only lock. And the reason being, he doesn't need the ball in his hands. He's not going to be one of those players that's going to do that. He's going to play his role. He's going to play some of the best defense in the world. And he's just going to play like exactly how Team USA is going to ask him to. He's going to be the perfect role player as like the 11th or 12th man on like a Team USA team next year. That's my only lock. Everyone else, it might be completely different. But I do want Mikal Bridges to go over.
I think talent-wise, you would get pushback because people would probably say Anthony Edwards, and I think in that kind of high talent environment, because it's different. When Anthony Edwards goes to FIBA this year, he's the best player. He let Steve Kerr know. Steve Kerr tried to make him the sixth man off the bench. He goes, hey, Dwayne Wade and guys like that came off the bench for these kind of tourneys, and he says, well, we don't have that guy, so I'm gonna do what I do. But on a team like the big boy squad, Anthony Edwards as a springboard off the bench, he would understand why he would be coming from that perspective. B, I think he could be a really big energy guy off the bench to go kill on second units. And C, shoot, if we're going down to tryouts, I think that's a guy who should want to be in that kind of environment for the Olympics. Because I think that's a guy that if he can compete at a high level like that, even if he doesn't make the team, we've seen it with Olympics play in the past, TV. It's a lot of guys, especially young players, bro. If you're sub 27 years old and you make it on the Olympics team, that next season, TV, they come back a demon, dog. They come back a demon every time. Zach LaVine had one of his best all-star seasons coming off the Olympics a season or two ago. Man, and that's been a universal thing. There's always one diamond in the rough that comes back from Olympics play, a much better player than the guy we saw come over, and those guys are already really talented. Yeah. So Anthony Edwards under Olympics supervision, FIBA, and still like running around with the USA's, international AAU squad. You know what I mean? Yeah. Changes every year, and it's all down to whose parents are willing to pay for tickets. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. Okay. But with the big boy squad, I think that's a guy who could be really interesting on that team. I agree with you with Mikal Bridges as well, and I'll say why. And I hate to give this guy flack in the route of trying to give Mikal Bridges praise, but I have to because I think it's a good representation of just how the international game needs to influence how we go about putting together these teams beyond just talent. Brandon Ingram is one of the best one-on-one players in the NBA. Yeah. I believe that. In isolation basketball, as a one-on-one scorer, he is one of the better ISO basketball players we have in the league. That is also what made him the biggest liability on FIBA outside of probably Jaren Jackson Jr. That is what made him easily, and it showed in his lack of playing time as we got deeper into the tournament. Yeah. His reliance on needing the ball in his hands on a team full of guys that are all trying to play interconnected basketball against a set of teams that have coexisted, have the kind of interconnection that we're talking about in terms of playing with each other, not just in terms of coexisting for a long time, but understanding tendencies. These are all things the U.S. doesn't have. So these are things that when you get to this level, you weed out instantly. Mm-hmm. You can't send a bunch of guys, specifically, like I'm using Brandon Ingram as an example here. You can't use a bunch of guys who are one-on-one demons to go win on international soil. You can't. Because they don't play that way, and that style that they play is geared towards the environment you're going into. And that's how you weed guys like that out. So as good as Brandon Ingram is, when he's on the New Orleans Pelicans, he was arguably maybe the second or third worst player on the entire team for the U.S. going into FIBA. And it's because of his skill sets, like a lack of diversity.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be a lot of changes U.S. is going to have to make next year. I think Edwards and Mikal Bridges are, for me, the two main guys, like you mentioned, are probably the biggest chance to make it for the next one. They also just need a bunch of bigs. I mean, Jaren Jackson Jr. did not work. I mean, if Bam comes over, great. That would be fantastic. Anthony Davis comes over, great. Fantastic.
And I liked Paolo. I liked Paolo's willingness to play center. And I think that's something that, again, we mentioned it throughout the tourney. I like the fact that he was willing to take some minutes at center. I think that's something that could be really beneficial for the Orlando Magic to take some clippings of and really put together a game plan around him at the center position, because they could play some really small ball lineups that could get grimy in terms of playing fast pace, in terms of being able to play switchable basketball. They could take some. I think the Orlando Magic and the Indiana Pacers are the two biggest winners from an NBA perspective coming out of the FIBA tournament, because I think we got to see what Paolo Banchero at center can really do. And we saw Franz Wagner play at a really high level on the international stage. That's huge. Those are two guys that are the centerpieces of your franchise at the moment. That's big when you talk about going into a year where I think the Orlando Magic want to be competitive. Then when you talk about what the Indiana Pacers learned, Tyrese Halliburton played in a more distributive role as a member of FIBA. And we got to see that when surrounded by athletes, Tyrese Halliburton can just be the orchestrator that makes everything happen. Yeah. And that gets you thinking. They still have Buddy Hield, Miles Turner. They got Bruce Brown. They still have Benedict Mathurin. They bring in Obi Toppin, right? They've got all of this athleticism, shooting, diversity across the roster. That's going to be a fun-ass team to watch in the open court, and we've got a sample size of that through FIBA basketball. So I think those are two teams that should be really excited about what they saw.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of there's a lot of good things that they can like people are gonna come out of, like you mentioned before. After a tournament like this, they're gonna like improve like a lot from here, even though they did get embarrassed. But I think it's still gonna be a positive experience, especially for a lot of those young guys. But yeah, that's all the FIBA talk. We might get into more Team USA stuff in the future, but let us know down below how you think that Team USA is gonna have to change for next year, and what else, and if you think like they're if they're still gonna be the heavy favorites going into the Olympics. But Jay, let's move on to this next topic, and this has been kind of like floating around after FIBA has happened, but the NBA has implemented new load management rules, and I knew this was kind of in the works like for a while now, but they
Mhm.
finally are going through with it. So the way that they are kind of wording this is that they want to have no more than one star player unavailable for the same game. So
Mhm.
you see what the Clippers in the past, they're resting Kawhi Leonard and Paul George in the same day. That's not going to happen anymore according to these new load management rules. The Spurs when they like rested all five of their starters, that can't happen anymore. Steph and for example, Steph and Chris Paul not going for the Warriors, they can't rest on the same day anymore. So they're adding these changes where they're trying to make it so only one star player is able to rest per game. They want to ensure that they're available for national TV games and also for the in-season tournament.
Mhm.
And another thing that they want to add here is try to stop any sort of like long-term shutdown. So you know how sometimes like lottery teams have like star players, they want to rest them, they don't want to like prevent injury. They're trying to prevent those as well. Jay, those are just a few of the things here, but how did you feel about these new management load management rules that they're implementing?
Me personally, bro, I think this is good for the game. I'm not gonna lie. This has been one of the biggest things hurting the NBA over the last 3 seasons in particular. And it's funny, if you look back, even when they named the All-Star uh requirements in terms of the players that fall under these rules, they specifically went 3 years back. And something interesting to note about that is
Oh, we're gonna
the
talk.
last the
Sure.
last time that Kawhi Leonard was named an All-Star, just happened to be a couple of seasons ago in terms of being able to fill that void. So that was pretty interesting. But kind of to topple onto the whole Kawhi Leonard thing, I recently wrote an article about this for the newsletter I do for Prediction Strike, the online betting company. If anybody's interested in that stuff, online fantasy betting. But um, I literally nicknamed these management rules the LA Clippers rules. And the reason why is because between these new load management rules and the league's let's say unfavorable scheduling of the Clippers, if you've seen the stats on the travel, the amount of back-to-back games and stuff, this seemed like a summer where the NBA front office really wanted to stick it to the finessing and finagling of the LA Clippers. And I know they're not the team specifically that, like, they're a team that's specifically impacted by this, but they are kind of the poster child for this load management era because of Kawhi Leonard specifically, right? But if you go down the list, there's also a lot of disadvantages. One of the things that I didn't realize is that when you say no more than one all-star player is allowed to be unavailable for a given game, there's certain teams that are set to a little bit of a disadvantage. The Golden State Warriors, the Minnesota Timberwolves. Um, I think to an extent, there's a handful of teams that
Abs,
have.
abs a bit, yeah.
I was gonna say there's a handful of teams across the league that have 3 or 4 former all-stars or current all-stars on their teams, and it kind of creates a little bit of an imbalance because, for example, for a Portland Trailblazers team, they really only have Damian Lillard to worry about as long as he's still in the roster. We know how
Yeah.
that goes.
Yeah, but so did they have to worry something about like Scoot or something, or like a Jeremy Grant, even though because they don't consider themselves star players yet.
Right. So there's a little less worry with those things. Now, granted, you mentioned it beforehand, you have to refrain from shutting down Damian Lillard. So there's also that counterbalance to it. That
Yeah,
makes sense as well. But on the flip side, like I said, a team like the Minnesota Timberwolves, for example, who have Mike Conley, Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert, and Karl Anthony Towns, their team is at a little bit more of a disadvantage in this kind of situation. So it's a give and take, but I do think regardless, it's big for the league. One of the most important rules here is teams must ensure that star players are available for national TV and in-season tournament games. That is where the revenue of the NBA is built the most. Nationally televised basketball games and this newly implemented in-season tournament are going to be the biggest money grabbers for this league. And if your best players are not participating, that hurts the product. And so that, I think, single-handedly might be the most important rule out of everything that's been, implemented in terms of cracking down on load management.
Yeah. I mean, I like it. I like the concept of it. But I agree with you with the three All-Star, the All-Star in the last 3 years thing. It's kind of like a slippery slope. Because like you mentioned, it's kind of unfair to a team like the Timberwolves. While a team like the Denver Nuggets, it doesn't matter. This doesn't apply to Jamal Murray. This doesn't because he's not made an All-Star team yet. This doesn't apply to the New York Knicks, who have Jalen Brunson, who hasn't made an All-Star team yet. And what's gonna suck is, like, for example, like the team like the Brooklyn Nets. If Mikal Bridges makes an All-Star team this year, apparently they can't rest him and Ben Simmons in the same game, which is again really weird. So it's kind of like like you mentioned, it's a weird give and take. I mean, it sucks for your Chicago Bulls too. You can't rest Vucevic, Levine, or DeRozan in the same game. So again, it's a give and take for sure. But I feel like there could be something better. I know star is such an ambiguous term and it really can be interpreted in so many ways. But there got to be some sort of like parameters around this. So Jay, I'm gonna propose to you a way to do this. Okay. Just to make it as objective as possible.
Okay.
NBA 2K just came out. Let us go with, and let's label those star players as anyone who's labeled 84 overall or above, and we can have that as the measuring stick. I'm like
interesting.
I'm half joking over here, but at least that kind of gives like a solid base, and it kind of like shows, especially with like team like the Timberwolves. Conley is not an All-Star player anymore. Ben Simmons is probably not an All-Star player anymore. Like for the Brooklyn Nets, when you have that barrier, and then, like I mentioned, I'm half joking, but it kind of like at least gets some sort of like benchmark. You know what I mean? Like
who's a notable player or two at 84 in terms of like a benchmark that we're using?
I am glad you asked. So if we look at the team like the New Orleans Pelicans, for example, players such as Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, and CJ McCollum will fall under that. Jonas Valanciunas, who's 83 overall, is just misses out. The New York Knicks, that means Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle are not going to be able to rest the same day. The Atlanta Hawks, DeJounte Murray, Trae Young, that's about the same thing, so everyone else is fine. But a team like the Detroit Pistons, who have no All-Stars with them, it makes it so Cade can't miss any of these games. So like he's right at the threshold at 84 overall. That means one player from the Detroit Pistons is like exempt from this rule. It can be like included as part of this rule. Of course, the Cavs have a couple of guys over there, but that means I know it says in the article that Jared Allen is a part of it. He's no longer a part of it with this rule. Instead, it's Evan Mobley, because like we can even say that he's also the better player. So again, half joking over here, but it's like kind of like a benchmark, some sort of benchmark.
Yeah. It's an interesting threshold, and I think in a way it does clarify things a bit because there is a bit of a legacy to the All-Star game as well, right? We see first-time All-Stars plenty, right? But there's a lot of repeat offenders that make the All-Star game. And so, of course, that condenses the overall pool because if the same guys are multi-time All-Stars, that decreases the amount of guys that fall into the categories that fit best for how these rules apply. For example, like you mentioned beforehand, a team like Detroit isn't even impacted by this rule in any shape or form, right? Because they have not had an All-Star, as opposed to a team like Minnesota, you mentioned beforehand, they have 4 players who qualify, and that's simply because Mike Conley made an injury replacement like a season or two ago. These are the different things that get factored in that I think kind of create discrepancies. That's where the 84 overall thing, like you said before, it's tongue in cheek, but I do think it's a more physical representation of identifying who the best guys in our league are. Because you mentioned, for example, Jared Allen for the Cleveland Cavaliers would not qualify for this list, but Evan Mobley instead would, as opposed to the way our rule is set up as of now. It would actually be the reverse. But I think most of us would make the argument that if you're going to watch a Cleveland Cavaliers game, the draw is Evan Mobley, not Jared Allen. Exactly. And so these are the different things to factor in, where it takes more into account the guys that everybody is coming to see on a given night. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's like you said, it's kind of tongue in cheek, it's a little funny, but it is a good little benchmark to kind of use to get a better understanding, not just of who the best guys are, but who the heck everybody wants to watch every single night.
Yeah, 100%. Like, for example, the Spurs are, again, one of those teams that are not affected by this rule. This makes sure that Wemby doesn't, like, get to, like, have these, like, resting rules and stuff like that. Because you know they're going to protect that, like, you're going to protect that boy like they're, like, his newborn son, which he is to the San Antonio Spurs organization. Right. At the end of the day, he's not exempt from this rule. People, especially when he comes over to the East Side, want to see him play. This, right, like, kind of, like, allows him to do, like, kind of, like, gives him some sort of, like, arrow to kind of, like, do that. Now, the bad thing is we are putting the livelihoods of these NBA players in the hands of Ronnie 2K and these ratings guys. But maybe we can get some, like, actual NBA guys, make these ratings based on all this stuff, and maybe it'll be a bit better, but who knows? I mean, again, it's like you mentioned, it's more of a joke sort of thing, but it's something to think about. It is something to think about. But yeah, those are the load management rules. We talked about which teams are really going to be affected, like we mentioned, the Clippers and stuff. But it's going to be exciting to see which teams are going to really, like, if this is actually going to increase the games, or does this mean it's just going to freaking, like, they're going to create some, like, random injuries to kind of make up for the rule rest as well.
True.
So we're going to have to wait and see how that transpires in the regular season. Moving on to the next topic. We're going to be talking a little bit about the season. I wanted to do, like, we're going to be, like I mentioned, we're going to be doing some season previews over the next couple, like, weeks leading up to the NBA season. But we're going to do a little bit of a taster here. I mean, we talked a lot about international play. We talked about the load management rules. We're going to do a little bit of a preview here. And what we're going to do is, for me and Jay, we're going to be doing a few fill in the blanks. Maybe we might not do all 5 because of the time we're pressing for the episode, but we're going to do maybe 3 of them for today, just as a kind of a preview as to what we're going to be looking out for the NBA season. So, for example, I'm going to be like, this is not one of the things on the list, but blank is the best player in the league right now. We're going to have a blank over here, and we're going to try to fill it out, and we're going to kind of give our reasoning for that. So, Jay, I'm going to throw over the first one to you. Blank is the most underrated free agent signing of this offseason.
Oh, man, that's a great one. I think the most underrated free agent signing is Max Strus, bro. I think Max Strus, when you look at what the Cleveland Cavaliers have needed for the last 2 to 3 seasons now, that 3 position has been the one, right? Isaac Okoro has been kind of a fill-in. They had Jetty Osman for a while. They even tried Karis LeVert in stretches to cover that three spot. But they can't seem to find anybody that necessarily sticks, that falls into this skill set where they can defend at a relatively high level next to a backcourt where you're going to really need some defense. Because let's be honest, like, Evan Mobley's real. Jared Allen is real, but you need to be able to have some real chutzpah, I guess. I can't really think of another word, but you need to have somebody who can be effective on the perimeter, because Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland is a small backcourt. And don't get me wrong, Max Strus kind of contributes to, like, the small-ish backcourt, but I think that, and this is the biggest caveat, right, is there's this weird history of Miami Heat guys who are not the same after they leave Miami. It's kind of the reverse of the Lakers thing, where guys, like, leave the Lakers and turn into, like, all-stars and most improved players. Like, with the Miami Heat, people come out of the Miami Heat program and they kind of, like, drift off into the abyss. So this is a very big swing for the Cleveland Cavaliers in terms of, if they can get the Max Strus that we saw during a majority of the regular season and especially during the playoffs with the Miami Heat,
Yeah.
this could be one of the better, like TV, I'll go on record. If Max Strus can be a 14 to 15 point per game scorer, I think the Cleveland Cavaliers come out of the East as a number one seed in the regular season. I don't think they come out of the East, but I think they end the regular season as the team with the top record in the Eastern Conference if he's that good.
Yeah.
I think everything else is good.
I could definitely see that. And I think that that like signing by the Cleveland Cavaliers really like addressed like the single like position in their lineup that needed the most help. Because like you said, the backcourt is set, the front court is set with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. The three position has kind of been like a rotating circle. Is it Karis LeVert? Is it Isaac Okoro? Now you got Max Strus into the mix, who proved that he can provide at a high level in an NBA playoff, NBA final setting. You have that experience over there in the three position. Yes, he's still kind of short. He doesn't like help out the size on the wings, but he's a solid defender. He can hit the three, and he doesn't need the ball to be effective, which is really good. And that's what the Cleveland Cavaliers kind of need. I think it's a great sign for them. We'll have to wait to see if the money is gonna like reflect like his production, but I think that that's a great signing for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I think that someone like Max Strus leaving the Miami Heat is absolutely gonna hurt the Miami Heat's chances moving forward as well, because he was definitely one of their key role players. For me, I'm gonna say that Derrick Rose is the most underrated free agency signing, and here's why. I think it's gonna be a combination of him, Marcus Smart, and Steven Adams. That culture is gonna shift over there in Memphis. We've seen them for years kind of like a just immature feel, not really have like being led by John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. These are a bunch of young guys that have been like running the locker room. Sure, they had Steven Adams over there, but it's a predominantly young locker room over there in Memphis. They add these veterans, Derrick Rose and Marcus Smart, into the roster, and knowing the amount of stuff that these guys have been through, they're gonna really like shape out this Memphis Grizzlies culture. They're really gonna help shape it, and they're going to let Memphis be a more mature and a more like solid team out west, even in John Morant's absence. Derrick Rose might not get a lot of minutes, but he is definitely going to help out the locker room a lot. A lot of everyone in the league seems to respect the hell out of him, which makes absolute sense. I think the sign to Memphis, even though like I mentioned, he's not going to play a lot of games, he's not going to really be on a court match except for garbage time, but he's going to be part of that like change of Memphis culture, and he's going to be one of the lead voices for it. I'm going to say that he is going to be one of the most underrated free agent signings. But if you want to do someone on the court, I think someone like Dario Saric going to the Golden State Warriors is going to be something that's going to really like help them with their floor spacing. And they need those type of role players because they're missing them a lot, especially losing out on Otto Porter and other guys from the past years. But yeah, those are, I guess, my two underrated free agency signings.
I think that you make a really good point. I think especially about the Derrick Rose one, I think the biggest thing that's going to shift the Memphis Grizzlies into real championship contenders is, for lack of a better way to phrase it, getting their shit together. Like, I really think that's what it is. They have the bravado, they have the talent, skill set across the board. They have a superstar, an all-star caliber big, an anchor at the center position, a rising shooting guard, depth across the board in terms of young talent that's developed in-house. I think the main thing that they miss is the straw that stirs the drink, so to speak. The guy or the group of guys that can really keep the whole thing on even course. Don't get me wrong, Steven Adams is a really big veteran in their locker room. I still feel like he's not necessarily the guy, though, that you look to as a leader in a locker room. Steven Adams kind of feels like the kill him with kindness kind of leader. And I don't necessarily think that's who the Memphis Grizzlies need as the guy to say, guys, we need to settle down and we need to lock in. I don't think that's the guy for that. We know John Morant is not that guy, not just because of his youth, but because of his actions. We know that although Jaren Jackson is very good for his age, he's not necessarily a guy that's seen enough postseason basketball, a lot of deep runs, a lot of big-time winning basketball until recently. So bringing in guys like Marcus Smart, bringing in guys like Derrick Rose, who have seen the we're talking about a former MVP and another guy in Marcus Smart who has made the Eastern Conference Finals in multiple years as a member of the Celtics.
And a
These are
one-time
guys.
finalist. Yeah, one-time NBA Finals as well.
Yeah, one-time NBA finalists as well. These are guys who we've seen produce at one of the highest levels that we have in the league. And I think that's going to be what really helps define this team this year. Because I think they can last 25 games without Ja. But can they be a legitimate threat in the postseason in a Western Conference that still feels like anybody's game? That's where these intangible things, TV, I think this is where you make a really good point. This is where the intangible aspect of the postseason ends up mattering. It's not just that the game slows down. It's not that the game gets more physical. It's not that the coaching gets more X's and O's. It's that the guys that are on the floor have to be able to stay dialed in and not be riled up by the emotion of the stage. And guys like these have been in those trenches so often that I think they'll be able to kind of weather the storm that the Grizzlies have dealt with the last 2 seasons.
100%. So, yeah, those are a couple of good free agency signings. Hopefully we can see them make an impact on the team season this year. Next, fill in the blank. Don't get your hopes too high for blank. Jay, go first.
Don't get your hopes too high for the Golden State Warriors. I'm sorry, man. I got a weird feeling about this whole thing. I understand that Chris Paul is a kind of this all-around point guard, and he's a dude that can kind of get everybody in their spots, and it'll totally be fine with the idea of moving Steph Curry to the 2, playing Andrew Wiggins at like the 3 or the 4, playing Klay Thompson at whatever position that Andrew Wiggins doesn't play, and then starting Draymond Green, having Kevin Looney come off the bench. I get it, man, but look, we've seen this is one of those things that can go really well or really bad. Either this could be Chris Paul and Draymond Green could be one of the best 2 existing teammates on a championship caliber team we've ever seen, or this whole thing could implode in the first week of basketball. Like, seriously, like this is literally one of the most violent. We've never seen anything like this before, right? Like, for example, the universal rule, it's an unwritten rule, but the universal rule is you never end up on the Chicago Bulls and then go to the Detroit Pistons. It's a universal rule that not many know, but many understand. It just does not happen frequently. I'm talking to you, Ben Gordon. I can't believe you let that happen. But anyway, right? It's just a universal thing that doesn't happen often, right? It's not too many times that the guy who's been the nemesis, been one of your biggest nemesis in the Western Conference ends up on your roster. We're talking about a guy that went to battle with the Golden State Warriors as a member of the Houston Rockets, as a member of the LA Clippers, right? Yeah. This is the team that has impeded Chris Paul's championship progress for almost at least half his career. Yeah. And now he's a member of that team. He's built vitriol. He's built a lot of disdain. Everybody remembers the infamous fake laugh meme when he was walking away from Steve Kerr on the floor one time, right? Not that that should carry a lot of weight or anything, but this is a team that you've done battle with for so long, and you're already coming into training camp kind of letting it be known, I'm not coming off the bench. It might be the best thing for the team. Many view it that way. But as far as his mind is set, I'm not coming off the bench. You know who we've also seen that not work out so well for? Carmelo Anthony. Now, granted, I think, that's debatable because some would make the argument that after last postseason, we've officially seen the last of an elite level Chris Paul. Yeah. And then you pair on top of that Chris Paul's unwillingness to come off the bench, and you pair a toxic situation. So I would not get too hype about the Golden State Warriors, man, because I don't think they have very much depth personally. I like them bringing in Dario Saric. I think that was huge, but I don't think they have a ton of depth. And I don't know how much I trust this Chris Paul situation. Now, if they do what I think they were, or what I thought they were going to do, which is basically pull the D'Angelo Russell again in terms of acquiring a former all-star point guard, building back up his trade value to a certain extent, and then flipping him again at the trade deadline, okay, then by all means, this might be a good situation moving forward. But if this roster is set as is, it can be sticky. I don't know.
It can be sticky 100%. It's a big risk from the Golden State Warriors perspective to have someone like Chris Paul join their locker room, try to incorporate him potentially in the starting lineup, because they even said themselves there he's going to be a starter day one. So it's going to be interesting to see how they figure things out with them, how they're going to set up the starting lineup. That means, are they going to start with the death lineup right away? Is Draymond Green going to be at center right away? Does that mean Andrew Wiggins has to come off the bench, which is going to be a really weird thing? Who knows? But it's going to be interesting to see. Like you mentioned, I agree with the point. It's either going to be really good or really bad. There's going to be no in between with this situation. So It's going to be interesting to see how Chris Paul does fare with the Golden State Warriors. And let's see if he can try to revive his career and maybe get one last chance at the championship. For me, don't get your hopes too high for the New Orleans Pelicans. As much as I love their team in general, the makeup of their team, just them on paper looks like such a great team. They have Willie Green as a great head coach, but with the Zion Williamson injury history, with the current Trey Murphy injury, which is going to keep him out for the next 3 to 4 months, and just so much uncertainty around the team's health, I can't invest myself in it. I just can't invest myself into these New Orleans Pelicans. On paper, they're great. I'm excited to see if they can actually stay healthy, but Brandon Ingram has had his injury history like pretty big last year, and I just don't trust the fact that these guys are going to be able to be on the court enough together for me to say, like, this is going to be one of the top teams in the West, like we talked about a few seasons ago. Like, after they took the Phoenix Suns to the limit, this team is next. This team only needs Zion to be healthy, and they're going to take the next step. I can't trust that. I really can't. I think they have everything that you kind of need in a team, and they really built this team around Zion, which is fantastic. I just don't trust it enough for them to really make the next push, or even potentially even be a playoff team. As much as this team is striving for the playoffs, with the amount of like you mentioned, the amount of jumbleness in the West of how it could be anyone's game, I can't trust a lineup like the Pelicans, who haven't been able to stay healthy in the last 4 seasons. So they're going to be my team where I just can't get too excited about them.
I think they're the team that you go into every season just having the highest hopes and being proven wrong. Honestly, how you feel about the New Orleans Pelicans is like how I typically have felt the opposite about the LA Clippers. Actually, I've went into every season for the last 2 to 3 years saying, I think the LA Clippers might have the deepest roster in basketball. And what does it amount to? You know what I mean? And the New Orleans Pelicans are that as well. They fall into that category of one of the better teams in theory than they are in reality. And like you said before, you go down the list. Zion Williamson, there's always that fear. Brandon Ingram, not coming off the best FIBA area. So maybe he's going to come back to the regular season with a vengeance, considering the fact that his last showing basketball-wise wasn't too great. But we'll see. CJ McCollum has his injury history. Trey Murphy III, who was arguably going to be able to make it into the starting lineup this year, already starting out behind the 8 ball. I believe Jose Alvarado is also dealing with something as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're already kind of limping into the season as it is. So, to expect a ton out of them this year, I don't know how viable that is when you look at some of the other teams that were at the bottom of the Western Conference who we just know are going to be at least a little better, starting with a team like the Dallas Mavericks, for example, who I think a full season of Kyrie and Luka could be really good as a regular season team.
Yeah, 100%. So we got to keep our hopes low for them. I love the theorizing about this team and seeing how far they can go, but you just can't do it unless you be able to see the product out on the court. We'll do one more before we move on to the final topics. Jay, fill in the blank. Join the blank hype train early. This could be a player or a team, but join the blank hype train early. Make a case for someone.
Dude, let me get this off my chest. I've tried this. a couple of different seasons, and it's taken a while for it to finally build. But you know what? The same thing happened with the Denver Nuggets. I've been calling the Denver Nuggets since 2017. Check the tape. But
not Jonathan Isaac. Please, not Jonathan Isaac.
Not Jonathan Isaac, because we're off of that. I can't do that anymore. But it is his team. Look, the Orlando Magic this year.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
Listen, guys. Listen, hear me out. I gotta look into the camera for this one. The Orlando Magic are in a very interesting position. Markelle Fultz had a really good bounce back year last season. Jalen Suggs is one of the best defending point guards in the NBA already. Can't shoot a lick, not very good offensively, one of the better defensive point guards in the league. They get Anthony Black, who I think is the best of both worlds, kind of between Markelle Fultz and Jalen Suggs, but I think that there's a little bit of upside there for Anthony Black worth leaning on. We saw Paolo Banchero at center, and it's something that provides a little bit of flexibility, and you've got to kind of like what they're doing with that. They still, if I'm not mistaken, they still have Wendell Carter Jr., yes?
Yes.
Which I love him because I believe that Wendell Carter Jr. alongside PJ Washington are like two of the most underrated bigs in the NBA right now. Franz Wagner is as real as it gets as a three-man who can give you a little bit of everything. And I think if he can up that three ball, that makes them even more dangerous. Look, man, I've tried this a couple of different seasons in a row. Watch out for the Orlando Magic because I think they're not TV first big boy prediction of the 2023-2024 season.
Yeah.
Not only do I think that the Orlando Magic will make the play-in tournament, because I think they will make the play-in tournament. I think they get the 8th spot. I think the Orlando Magic could take the 8th spot this year. I really do.
Yeah.
I don't know, guys. Let me know in the comments.
You know what? I don't mind it because if I was gonna one of my choices for this when I was coming up with it was gonna be Franz Wagner. So if you want to do it to Orlando Magic, you know what? I like their roster. I like the youth that they got over there. If you look at their post All-Star game record, they were actually in the mix for a play-in tournament spot. I don't mind it. And with another year of Paolo Banchero growing, you got the new rookies and Anthony Black and who was the other man they drafted? I think it was. I knew there was someone else I wanted them to draft instead of
this year.
Yeah, I think it was Anthony Black, and they drafted someone else at the 11th pick. They should have got Grady Dick. Not gonna lie, they should have.
Yeah, I was gonna say I thought it was Grady, but they got Juwan Howard's son.
Oh, Jet. They got Jet Howard. Yeah, Jet Howard. Mm-hmm. So I wish that if they went with Grady Dick, I would have been a lot more higher on this team because they still have a lot of shooting issues on their team. But I like the pick. I think that the Orlando Magic team is going to be one of those League Pass teams. If you have League Pass, keep an eye out for them. They're going to be a really fun watch, and they might be low-key good this year. So be on the lookout for that. For myself, guys, I'm getting flashbacks for the Utah Jazz. They got Lauri Markkanen as the Gordon Hayward. They got Walker Kessler as the Rudy Gobert. But now I see Keontae George being the next Donovan Mitchell for this team. I don't know, man. I love what he did in summer league. I love his shooting splits in college were not the best, but I was super impressed what he did in summer league. And I think with the lack of certainty at the guard position, I mean, they got Colin Sexton, they have Jordan Clarkson. All those guys are basically expendable. Keontae George might just go in and take that spot, man. I really think that he could be a number one scoring option for this team eventually next to Lauri Markkanen. I think that the Utah Jazz are cooking something over there. And I think that Keontae George, the 16th overall pick, low-key dark horse rookie of the year winner? Who knows? He just needs to be getting the opportunity. I'm super high on this guy. I love the way he plays. I think that you got to get on that hype train early, man. Keontae George is going to be next, man. I think he's going to be such a great fit on that Utah Jazz team. I'm liking a lot of what I'm seeing from him.
Man, I got to sleep on that one, TV, because I like Keontae George a ton too, but I wonder if he is. I do think they're going to let him get a lot of burn early, bro. I do think they might even let him start. He might be a guy who gets a lot of playing time. I just wonder if the Utah Jazz are going to want to take it a little slow after seeing how they kind of got off to a hot start last year, only for it to kind of regress. I wonder if they're going to – I wonder – it's Danny Ainge, man. It's Danny Ainge, and that makes me wonder if they're going to want to take like one more year to feel it out. Cooper Flagg is 2 years away. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but I mean, look, when they got Donovan Mitchell, was he one of the top picks of the draft? This man was like number 12, and they stumbled upon one of the best two guards in basketball.
This is true.
Look, sometimes, like, this is why you in the draft, like, it's more about the scouting than anything than just trying to tank for the number one overall pick. Sometimes you just fall upon these people, and they just automatically work for you. Walker Kessler was freaking like the 20-something pick last year and was one of the best defensive bigs in the center.
Yeah.
Keontae George could be in that mix if you just potentially give him the opportunity. I'm not saying he's going to be Donovan Mitchell, because Donovan Mitchell was an absolute dog in his rookie season as well, making the NBA playoffs with the Utah Jazz. But there's a chance, man. And I think that if they let Keontae get the burn, join the hype train early. This guy's about to be one of those, like, on those sleeper guys that in a couple years they might see them like in those type of conversations for one of the best two guards in the league.
Dang, he's got a lot of hype behind Keontae George. I'm hyped to hear it, bro, because I loved Keontae coming out of the draft, but it's gonna be interesting to see how they treat him. Utah could be scary though. Early on, I think they're gonna be another team that tries to set the tone, but we'll see how Danny Ainge's philosophy is, man. We know he's a shrewd operator.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, we might do these more in the future. We'll wait and see, but let us know down below for the fill in the blanks that we've done so far. What are some of the other guys or other teams that you would like to put in those blanks, basically? And let us know what you guys think of our suggestions down in the comment section below. Gee, moving on to the final few topics of the episode. You know these are going to be staples of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast. We got the draft, we got the quiz, and of course we're going to hit with the draft right now. And Jay, I'm going to throw it over to you. This was your draft idea, and we're going to kind of roll with it. It's around load management, right?
Yeah, man. So I was thinking about this after the load management rules came out, because I just thought it was so interesting. They're targeting all-star players. They're targeting these guys who have been missing majority of the season, missing nationally televised games, because they want the product to be better, because we love seeing our NBA players on the floor every single night, giving us the best they can in competition over the course of an 82-game regular season. So that got me thinking, how many guys are really 80 to 82 game per season players anymore, right? How many guys are really playing full seasons nowadays? And for those who don't have context, there's not too many, actually. It's about 10 to 11 guys who played 82 games last season.
Yeah.
But that got me thinking, in lieu of the load management rules, how about we shed some light on the guys who have been anti-load management establishment, the guys who have played, and I set this threshold real evenly keeled to give us an interesting list to pull from. We're going to be drafting our best 5 guys we can grab out of players that have played at least 80 games from the 2022-2023 season. For context, the reason why I cut it off at 80 games is because me and TV were joking about this before the podcast started. Literally, the first couple of guys that come up on the list at 79 games are Anthony Edwards, Domantas Sabonis, Evan Mobley, Jabari Smith, Trey Murphy III. Those are just a handful of the guys that just at 79 games would have made the cut if I started any lower. So we're going to start at 80 games and choose from that group, and we'll see the best team we can make.
Yeah, there's 26 guys for us to choose from. You know how the draft works. Jay gets the first overall pick. It's going to be Serpentine style. I get the next 2. He gets the next 2, and so on and so forth.
Yes,
so, Jay, your draft, you get the first pick as well. Who do you want over here? I'm gonna call this the Iron Man draft. The guys who will play basically most.
I like that name, TV. That's what the caption for this TikTok's gonna be. Let's get it. For the first overall pick in the Iron Man draft, I will be going with the only guy in the NBA to play 83 games in the league.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Mikal Bridges at my 3 to start things off. I don't know how he played 83 games. It might have been a part of the trade situation to Brooklyn.
Yeah, it was.
But that man, I mean, by this definition, he is the Iron Man king. 83 games is untouched. I'm going to go with Mikal Bridges.
Oh, yeah, no, this guy's the definition of Iron Man. I don't think he missed a game since high school. I think they talk about that a lot, but he hasn't missed a game since high school. That's how much Mikal Bridges has played. He definitely deserves to be number 1 on this list, though. I knew he was going to be gone pretty quickly. For my first pick and my second pick, I'm going to go with someone here that I was going to put as my player to watch or join the hype train early for this guy. Give me player of the finals, I think, of FIBA, Franz Wagner at my number 3. He played 80 games last year, averaged a pretty damn good stat line as well, averaging like 18 points per game last year. And I think he's going to continue to get better. I think he's going to be like one of those like young stars in the league, possibly one of the best players from his draft class as well. So give me Franz Wagner as my first pick. And with my second pick, you can go a lot of different directions here. I'm going to go, I like this list, not going to lie, just because it's like players that we wouldn't really think about for a usual draft. So, you know what? I'm going to go with someone who hasn't gotten much opportunity, but I think if you give him the opportunity, he's going to absolutely go off. Give me our Canadian boy, 2-guard for the Portland Trail Blazers. Give me Shaedon Sharpe.
Ooh, that's a good pull, TV.
Give me Shaedon, man. I think that, again, if Damian Lillard does get traded and you have a backcourt of Shaedon and Scoot Henderson, that's a lot of highlights, and that's going to be a lot of buckets if you give that backcourt a shot. So give me Shaedon. I know he only averaged like 9 points a game last year, but he's a highlight machine, and I think if given the better opportunity, he'll rise to the occasion. So give me Shaedon.
I like that one. That's some high upside right there.
Yeah.
All right. So first off the board, because I got 2 of these back to back. First off the board, we're gonna go with the new guy who's entered the East Coast. He's headed over to the team down the street from me, the Washington Wizards. Give me Jordan Poole at the 2-guard position. Got to get Mr. Phillip up at that spot. I really like what we could do offensively with him and Mikal Bridges.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I'm going to finagle my list. I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to bump down Mikal Bridges to the 4. We're going to be a little smaller today. We're going to put Mikal Bridges at the 4. I'm going to keep Jordan Poole at the 2. Give me my boy Derek White, one of the best two-way guys on the wing in the league. Give me my boy Derek White. I'm going to slide him at the 3 spot real quick.
That was going to be my next pick. He's going to be my point guard, bro. This man was about to be my point guard.
He could, but there's somebody that's going to come up later on that I think might fit a little bit better for what I'm trying to get at the point guard position. So I'm going to slide him at the 3 for this one.
Damn it. I was really going to go with him in my point guard position. Damn. I like those picks. I really do like those picks. So time for me to do this. Okay. I'm feeling I'm going to have a really young team, man. I have a feeling I'm going to have a really young team here. I have back-to-back picks here, so I'm going to get the veteran out the way because I think that this guy could like make a really good 4. This just the epitome of consistency. Never like I wouldn't say the definition of average, but he kind of is, but he's reliable as heck. Give me at my 4, Harrison Barnes.
Oh, that's a fan favorite right there, boy. Harrison Barnes got to be drafted. I love it. Let me say that.
Harrison Barnes. I'm going to add him to my 4, so I got him. I got Franz. I've got Shaedon Sharpe, and I'm going to take my point guard here. This guy is called All Day because he's going to be locking you up all day. Give me Davion Mitchell, man, at the point guard position. Again, someone who is unfortunately playing behind one of the best point guards in the league in De'Aaron Fox, so he doesn't get much opportunity. But given the opportunity, I think this guy is able to step up too. Give me Davion.
I like Davion Mitchell, man. I like that one too because he's just a dog. He's just a dog, man. All right. Well, I'm gonna get my first pick out the way at the point guard spot. Come on, man. Friend of the show at this point. His name gets brought up like once every 2 podcasts. I don't know if I just have an infatuation, But it's one of the best point guards in the league. I don't care what anybody says. He's one of the best point guards in the league. Shout out to, again, fellow Washington Wizard down the street. Give me my boy, Tyus Jones, at the point guard position. Come on, man. At this point, I feel like his name comes up too frequently on this podcast, and I'm sorry. I'm just one of the biggest Tyus Jones fans there is, and he just barely cracks the list at 80 games, so I have to draft him while he's here. So I had a feeling you're gonna go for him. He's at this point, like the amount of times we talked about him the last like 3 or 4 podcasts, I knew you're gonna. Yeah. Hey, look, man. Like I said, he's one of my favorite players in the league as a guy that comes off the bench. When you talk about underrated, Tyus Jones, I feel like it's like one of the poster childs for the point guard position when it comes to that conversation at this point. So yeah, give me Tyus at the point guard spot. So hey, I got the Washington Wizards backcourt. We'll see if they produce during the actual league year. But for my squad, they're gonna do what it do. And then for my center position, this is where...
Jay, I'm going to be disappointed if you don't go with this guy.
Listen to me. This is where I have to use heart over head. I've been trying to be logical, but I got to lead with my heart on this one, man. Give me Nikola Vucevic at the center spot, man. If I didn't... Look, man, we weren't a good basketball team, but we got Nikola Vucevic and Patrick Williams on a list for an NBA draft on the Hit Your Free Throws podcast. Yeah. I got to get at least one Chicago Bull on the squad if I can reach for one. It was between him and another guy, but I got to go with my heart on this one. I'm going to finish it out. I'm going to finish out the list with a Bull. Give me Nikola Vucevic.
Yeah, I would be surprised if you let both of them on the leave them on the board. There's 2 Chicago Bulls in here. Technically, there's 3. There's also what's his name?
Javon Carter now, yeah.
Javon Carter, and also Ayo Dosunmu as well.
True.
There's a couple. Hey, look, you guys might be bad, but you guys play.
That's fucked up. Oh man, that's true though. That's the one thing about the Bulls you can rely on. They're not gonna give us an off night. They might be off, but they're not gonna take off. At least there's that. At least
so. They might have an off night, but they're not off.
Oh man, that's tough.
I fucking love that. I love that shit. All right. Okay, I gotta go with the center position too. Look, if you didn't go Vucevic, I was gonna end up getting him as well, so that's completely fine. I gotta go again. I'm going young, man. I'm going young. This guy's gonna be is playing right behind Clint Capella right now. Another player who just needs the opportunity. I think he's gonna excel at that role. Give me Onyeka Okongwu at the center position. I think he's gonna be a good defensive backbone for the team. I got Davion Mitchell defending the perimeter. You have the backbone there, and Onyeka Okongwu. I think that fits absolutely perfectly. That is my 5. Jay, the draft is complete. Let me hear your team. Let's see what your team's looking like.
All right. So for the Hit Your Free Throws Iron Man draft, my lineup is going to be Tyus Jones at the point guard position, Jordan Poole at the 2, Derek White at the 3, Mikal Bridges at the 4, and then my boy Nikola Vucevic at the 5.
Pretty solid. Over here on my side, we got the point guard position. We got all day. We got Davion Mitchell. We got the shooting guard position, Canada's own Shaedon Sharpe. We have the small forward in Franz Wagner, potential most improved candidate. Be on the lookout for that. Give me at the power forward position, Mr. Consistent Harrison Barnes. And at the center position, give me the young buck. Give me Onyeka Okongwu. Jay, how you feeling about your team?
I feel good, man. Honestly, again, another list where maybe a ton of new faces didn't pop up in terms of our draft, but there was a lot of interesting guys to still pull from. That once you narrow the list down to 80 games, it does get a little tricky. But Max Strus was here, Keegan Murray was here, Jalen McDaniels was here. A guy that I almost drafted if it weren't for the fact that Vooch was here. I almost took Kevon Looney. That was another guy I thought would have been really cool for this one. Isaiah Hartenstein, a really great per 48 minute player. If you check his per 36 and per 48 stats, he's a lot better when he gets real time. Doesn't play a ton for the Knicks, but when he gets on the floor, he's active. There's a lot of guys who do still play 80 plus games a year, man. There's I think there's at least a good list of 20 plus guys here, and it was fun to pull from.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we have some good teams, and we know what you know about this team is that they're going to be on the court and they're going to be producing. Let us know down below what team do you like better, me or Jay's. Let us know. We're also going to be trying to post this on the TikTok too, so we're going to give those guys a chance to see it. But Jay, we have reached the final topic of the show, and that means the NBA quiz. And I mentioned to you beforehand, it is a Bulls-related one as well. Inspired by the guys over there at Nerd Sesh. Follow them on TikTok and Instagram. These guys put out some great content, especially in terms of the NBA and NFL. But I have a quiz that is going to be inspired by one of their quizzes. Jay, there have been 13 NBA All-Stars for your Chicago Bulls since the year 1980. I'm gonna need you to name me each and every single one of them. Yeah, now on the Nerd Sesh page, they did up to 1970, which was absolutely crazy to me.
Holy cow, that's crazy.
But going back to 1980, there have been 13 NBA All-Stars that have played for your Chicago Bulls. I mean, who have made All-Star games as a Chicago Bull. So, Jay?
Okay, wait. Let me double check with you. Yeah. Right before we get started, they had to make the All-Star team as a member of the Chicago Bulls.
As a member.
Okay.
Chicago Bulls.
Ooh, okay.
So,
golly. This is since the 1980s?
Since the 1980-81 season. Sorry, since the 1980 All-Star game. So 1979-1980 season up to now. So, okay, Jay, let's hear some of these names.
We got to get some of the easy ones out the way, right? So we got to get like Joakim.
Joakim is in there. He was a 2-time All-Star.
Derrick Rose.
He was on the list. He made the All-Star 3 times with the Bulls.
Michael Jordan.
12-time All-Star with the Bulls.
Scottie Pippen.
7-time All-Star with the Bulls.
We got to start reaching now. Let's go like Artis Gilmore.
4-time All-Star with the Bulls. He's number 3.
Okay, basically just like barely cut the cheese with that one. Let's come up with some randoms. Did Horace Grant ever make an All-Star team?
1-time All-Star with the Chicago Bulls.
Okay, cool. Did Carlos Boozer the Loser ever make an All-Star team?
He did not make it with the Chicago Bulls.
Well deserved. Let me put that way. That's brutal, but I'm sorry.
My man does not like Carlos Boozer on this pod.
It's only because of the 2K jump shot. It's okay. If you know, you know. Golly. Zach LaVine.
He's made 2.
DeRozan.
He's made 2 as well. You're missing 5. You got a good chunk of the list already.
All right. Dennis.
Dennis didn't make it with the Bulls.
He didn't make it with the Bulls. Okay. That's tough. I know. All-Star is tricky because we've had some weird. Okay, has Luol Deng made an All-Star team?
2-time NBA All-Star with the Chicago Bulls.
Okay, see, we're making motion now. I got like a rant. Okay, I gotta go deep in the well. Oh my gosh.
One more you don't have to go deep. One more, you're missing one guy.
One more that I don't. Vooch?
Not Vooch.
Vooch didn't make one with us though.
Oh, no, he didn't.
I was about to say, he didn't make one with us.
You're missing probably a top 5 Bulls player all time.
Oh wow, no pressure. Okay. Oh, okay. Jimmy,
there you go. 3-time NBA. That's the other guy. So that's all obvious. The last 3 guys here, you might have to go to a deeper bag for.
Ooh, okay.
We have 2 2-time All-Stars with the Bulls, and we have 1 1-time All-Star.
Did Powell make an All-Star team with us?
2-time NBA All-Star with the Chicago Bulls.
Legend pool.
So now you have 2 guys, one from the 80s and one from the 90s.
Ooh, okay. Now this is where things get difficult because this is not like pre-era, but we're talking All-Stars. You know from the back and forth series, I can name some pretty obscure guys, but All-Star is tricky. But they both are 1-time All-Stars.
No, one is the guy from the 80s is a 2-time All-Star, and the guy from the 90s is a 1-time All-Star. And I'll tell you right now, the guy from the 90s made it to the All-Star game in an unconventional way. If you know,
does he play point guard?
He does play point guard.
Oh, okay. I think the minute you said unconventional and okay. So I got to look from the camera for this one because I got to make sure I got a deep dig. Deep. I'm looking at the Michael Jordan poster for inspiration for those who don't know. Yeah. This has to be B.J. Armstrong.
Yep, B.J. Armstrong, one-time All-Star for Chicago Bulls. He only made it because he got voted in. For some reason, he was super hyped up coming up from college, and he was voted into the All-Star game. So he was an All-Star starter. He was an All-Star starter, a.k.a. Andrew Wiggins. So B.J. Armstrong, one-time All-Star. Now you're just missing the 80s, dude.
80s is a deep cut.
I only know this guy because of 2K. I'll tell you right now. I only know this guy. This guy had a freaking decent mustache.
Guys, for my YouTubers and my TikTok people, that right there is a poster with the most obscure 2011 roster ever for the Chicago Bulls. There's literally Mike Dunleavy Jr. and Aaron Brooks on that poster right now.
Love that.
So that goes to show you how deep of a cut this gets. So when I name this next player, the podcast will end. Are you ready, TV?
Yeah.
When I name this next player, the podcast will end with that. This guy from the 80s was Reggie Theus.
It was Reggie Theus.
Okay.
The 13 guys on the list, Jay was able to name it, and with pretty ease. You know what? That was with ease. I don't think the only slip you had was Carlos Boozer, but besides that, everything else was good. And that is the list. That is all the NBA All-Stars for the Chicago Bulls since the 1980s. Let us know down below what other lists you want to do, what other quizzes. I am definitely open to all of that. But Jay, we have reached another end of a fantastic episode. Thank you guys for watching or listening. What do you have to tell these beautiful people before we sign out?
Dude, I know our upload schedule has been kind of inconsistent, but that's just because me and TV have just been grinding, man. Behind the scenes, we both have just been on a tear. But look, NBA season is around the corner. We've been letting you guys know for months. When the league year starts, that's when things are starting to get really, really crazy in terms of the kind of coverage and the kind of intricacies of the things we're trying to do are going to get. Things are only going to get more and more interesting. Me and TV have already come up with a bunch of unique ideas as it is. So stick with us on this one, man. The closer we get to the NBA season, the more fun we're going to have on this podcast. I want you guys to be along for the ride. I know we're enjoying every second of it.
100%. And you're going to be following along for the season previews for anything that we do pre-NBA season up to the NBA season. You know we're going to be covering all of that down here at the Hit Your Free Throws pod, on the podcast, on the Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff. Remember to, again, check out me and Jay's personal links down below. Make sure you follow the pod on Instagram and TikTok for the best daily NBA content, and to show love on the YouTube and the podcast networks in any way, shape, or form. We definitely do appreciate y'all. But we reached another end of another fantastic episode. Thank you guys for watching. Hope y'all guys have a fantastic day. This is Jay signing out. This is me signing out. Take it easy, guys. Peace.